Look at the sequencing of the 14 tracks on the 2024 album Hungover. It is, frankly, an absolute masterclass in structural storytelling.
A masterclass?
Yes, a masterclass. It's not just a random collection of songs, it's a narrative arc. You look at how the record is split right down the middle. She puts all these hyper-commercial, bravado-heavy country motifs at the very front.
Right.
And then as you move through the track list, she lets the back half completely collapse into this dark acoustic vulnerability. It is a literal auditory representation of the fake-it-till-you-make-it coping mechanism just failing in real time.
Failing. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you start with the whiskey and the swagger, and by the time you reach the end, the facade is completely eroded. It's brilliant.
I see why that narrative is appealing, I really do. But we have to look at the actual mechanics of the music industry. You are reading a highly romanticized, deeply psychological narrative into what is fundamentally textbook A&R risk mitigation.
A&R risk mitigation? Come on, you're stripping all the artistry out of it.
I'm not stripping anything. I'm just explaining how the business works. A&R, the artist and repertoire division at a label, their job is to develop an artist, sure, but their ultimate job is to ensure the label recoups its investment.
Obviously, but
So, pleasing radio-friendly tracks like I Blame the Bar and the title track Hungover at the top of an album isn't some profound artistic statement about emotional unraveling. It is a calculated mathematical strategy to guarantee initial market sentiment.
okay, explain what you mean by that. How does the track order guarantee a return?
Because of how streaming platforms are structured, Spotify, Apple Music, the label needed to secure those revenue streams from the Lainey Wilson and Miranda Lambert demographic immediately.
Right, the mainstream country base.
Exactly. If you put a slow, vulnerable acoustic track as track number 2, the skip rate spikes. And when the skip rate spikes, the algorithm penalizes the entire album and just drops it from algorithmic playlists like Hot Country.
So you're saying they front-loaded the swagger just to trick the algorithm?
I'm saying you hook the algorithm and the mainstream radio programmers in the first 15 minutes. That generates the capital, the playlist placement, and the streaming metrics required to indulging in the less commercially viable acoustic tracks like Broken In at the back end.
I see.
It's not a coping mechanism collapsing, it's an amortization schedule. The front half pays for the back half.
Okay. Well, I understand the cynical commercial packaging argument. I really do. But the lyrics themselves completely defy that kind of clinical boardroom math.
Do they?
Yes. Look at the precision of the songwriting in that first half. You say it's just radio bait, but the tracks Hungover and Nicotine perfectly articulate the neurology of trauma bonding and intermittent reinforcement.
Intermittent reinforcement. Come on, you're bringing clinical psychology into a country song about smoking.
Because it is there. I mean, for listeners who might not be familiar, intermittent reinforcement is essentially the slot machine effect.
Right.
If a slot machine pays out every time, it's boring. If it never pays out, you walk away. But if you don't know when the reward is coming, your dopamine spikes and you just keep pulling the lever.
Uh-huh.
That is exactly how toxic relationships work. Langley is explicitly comparing toxic love to a dopamine spike, and she uses the concept of an emotional hangover to describe how the human nervous system lags behind logical closure.
The nervous system lagging.
Right. She's talking about a physiological state where your cognitive brain knows a relationship is over, but your body is still processing the chemical withdrawal of the person. That is raw, unfiltered storytelling.
It's a metaphor.
It's forcing the mainstream country genre to confront actual documented behavioral psychology. She is disguising a clinical case study of trauma as a barroom anthem.
I have to stop you there because you are giving the Nashville songwriting machine way too much credit. Using bourbon and nicotine as metaphors for toxic relationships is simply executing a highly effective branding strategy.
How is it just branding when it's describing real psychological states?
Because it uses the most overplayed tropes in the history of the genre. Think about it. By wrapping basic pop psychology concepts in the familiar, easily digestible imagery of dive bars and cigarettes, the production team ensures that the dynamic range of the lyrics stays within a safe, marketable zone.
Dynamic range meaning what exactly? Like the emotional highs and lows?
Exactly. You don't want the listener to feel so alienated by complex psychological terms that they change the station. It makes the listener feel smart without actually challenging them.
Oh, I disagree.
If you want to penetrate the dive bar playlist ecosystem, you cannot hand them a behavioral psychology thesis on trauma bonds. You hand them a catchy hook about a bad boy and a cigarette. It's a sonic Trojan horse. But the soldiers inside aren't therapists trying to heal you. They're marketing executives trying to sell you a vibe.
But she does challenge them. I mean, if it were purely about safe, marketable tropes, she wouldn't have written Paint the Town Blue. That track explicitly rejects the industry's demand for artificial resilience.
Elaborate on that. How does it reject the demand?
Well, think about the entire history of country music, especially for women. It relies heavily on the paint the town red trope.
Sure, going out after a breakup.
Right, the idea that you get dumped, so you put on your boots, you go out, you drink, and you party the pain away. It's this commercial mandate female artists always have to smile through the pain. They have to be sassy and resilient.
Yes, that is the standard.
But in Paint the Town Blue, she completely subverts it. She goes to the bar, orders straight-up bourbon, and just falls to pieces in front of the bartender. She is totally rejecting this Nashville rule that she has to perform the role of the strong, unaffected country girl. That is an artist actively refusing to participate in the toxic positivity the genre demands.
That subversion you're praising, that is exactly what the market was begging for.
Oh, so now breaking the rules is also part of the corporate plan.
Yes, because modern consumers crave authenticity as a product feature. Paint the Town Blue is a calculated pivot to capture the demographic that feels alienated by the party anthems.
It's just a genuine emotion.
The market was saturated with sassy breakup songs. To stand out, you do the opposite. But look, if you want to talk about how she subverts expectations, let's look at how she manipulates traditional gender rules. Because she doesn't do it as some grand feminist crusade. She does it as a mechanism to dominate the market.
I assume you're referring to the architecture of a track like You Look Like You Love Me, the spoken word duet with Riley Green?
Exactly.
Well, I think that track is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Alongside songs like Cowboy Friends, she masterfully deconstructs hypermasculinity and the patriarchal John Wayne archetype that has choked country music for decades.
Deconstructs hypermasculinity. Okay, let's hear the theory.
In You Look Like You Love Me, she completely flips the structural power dynamic of the Southern bar scene. The woman walks up, she buys the beer, and she initiates the interaction with absolute confidence.
Right.
She strips the male figure of his traditional role as the initiator. That sparked a genuine feminist cultural moment. It was a massive assertion of female agency in a space, the honky-tonk, that has historically marginalized that exact agency.
I have to push back on the phrase cultural moment. Because what you're describing as a feminist awakening is actually just a masterclass in cross-platform market penetration.
Market penetration? You think a woman buying a man a beer is just an algorithmic trick?
I think that specific gender flip wasn't engineered for feminist liberation. It was engineered for TikTok virality. Let's look at the mechanics of how algorithms work. The TikTok algorithm inherently favors content that disrupts expected scripts. Why? Because disruption drives comment section engagement.
Right, people go to the comments to argue about it.
Exactly. The algorithm doesn't care if the comments are praising female empowerment or if they're traditionalists complaining about how a woman shouldn't buy a man a drink. It just sees engagement.
So it's just a formula to you.
Having a woman deliver a confident spoken word pickup line generated hundreds of thousands of user-generated videos because it was novel. And if you want proof that this was about demographics and not feminism, look at the execution of the live performances.
You mean Stagecoach?
Yes. Bringing comedian Theo Vaughn on stage at Stagecoach 2026 to sing Riley Green's part.
That was just a fun viral moment. Theo Vaughn is a huge personality.
It wasn't just fun. It was a ruthless cross-pollination of audience demographics. Think about the how of audience building. You take Theo Vaughn's massive male-skewing comedy podcast audience, and you fuse it with Sally Langley's female-skewing country base.
They're just sharing an audience.
You are artificially injecting her music into a demographic that would never naturally seek it out. That is exactly how you manufacture a 3x platinum record and secure the CMA Musical Event of the Year. It is demographic capture, pure and simple.
But you can't separate the art from the impact. Even if the mechanics of TikTok helped it spread, even if bringing Theo Von on stage was a smart demographic play, the core message resonated because it was true. Women connected with it. And what about the tour that followed? She built a massive community around that exact empowerment.
You mean the Hungover tour?
Yes.
The one exclusively sponsored by Happenstance Whiskey, which just so happens to be a 100% female-owned brand?
Yes, which is great. She supported a female-owned business.
It's a flawless capitalization on the badass woman brand identity. You align the messaging of female empowerment with a corporate sponsor to monetize the very feminist cultural moment you just described.
That's incredibly cynical.
It's a closed-loop economic system. The empowerment sells the tickets sell the whiskey reinforces the badass brand, which sells more tickets.
I am entirely unconvinced by that line of reasoning. You're treating her like a corporate entity. You're talking about closed-loop economic systems and amortization schedules, but you are completely ignoring the fact that she is a human being who is fundamentally crushed by the weight of that exact commercial machinery.
Crushed? She made millions.
And it broke her. You're praising the market penetration of the hungover era, but you're conveniently skipping over the psychological collapse that followed it. In mid-2025, she had to cancel a massive string of tour dates. We are talking major venues. She cited severe, crippling imposter syndrome and anxiety.
Mental health issues in the music industry are common, yes.
But don't you see how that validates the art? That breakdown proves that the vulnerability she sang about in the back half of Hungover, in tracks like Broken In, was entirely real. It wasn't a marketing gimmick. It wasn't risk mitigation. The industry pressure broke her.
I'm not saying it wasn't real.
And her reemergence in April 2026 with her sophomore album, Dandelion, represents a pure artistic rebirth.
Artistic rebirth is a very strong term for a strategic pivot.
She stripped away all the pop country elements. She returned to a 90s acoustic purity. She could have made Hungover Part 2. She could have chased the algorithms you love talking about so much. But she didn't.
She didn't have to.
She bonded with Miranda Lambert over what they called horses and divorces to co-executive produce the record. That shows an artist choosing integrity and healing over the industry machinery.
Look, I am not denying that mental health is real. What I refuse to romanticize is a hiatus that functions as the most aggressive, successful PR pivot in modern country music history.
A PR pivot? She canceled a tour because of anxiety, and you think it's PR?
I think how that hiatus was packaged and sold upon her return is what we have to analyze here. The Dandelion era wasn't just an artistic rebirth, it was a highly calculated repositioning. Let's look at the rollout mechanism. Do you remember the Nashville pop-up experience?
Where fans could go and drink dandelion tea and take photos in the original Chevy trucks? Yes, it was beautiful. It felt very intimate.
Intimate? It is pure experiential marketing.
Oh, come on.
How does experiential marketing work?
You create a physical space that feels exclusive and anti-commercial, specifically to cultivate a premium, authentic aesthetic. It's designed to be photographed and shared by influencers to signal that the artist has matured. And bringing Miranda Lambert on as a co-executive producer?
They bonded. They are two women navigating a brutal industry.
They are two major brands. Bringing Lambert on board was about leveraging legacy brand equity. By attaching Lambert's institutional weight to the project, the label elevated Langley from a viral TikTok act to an institutional pillar of the genre.
It's just a collaboration.
They used Lambert's credibility to inoculate Langley against the sophomore slump. It signaled to the Grammy voters and the industry gatekeepers, take her seriously now. You can engineer a pop-up experience. You can hire experiential marketing teams to park vintage Chevy trucks in Nashville. And yes, you can even leverage legacy connections to get industry attention, but you cannot fake mass emotional resonance.
The mass resonance is the goal.
The data from the Dandelion era completely contradicts your idea that this was just a clever PR trick.
The data is exactly what proves my point.
No, listen to the numbers. Look at the lead single, Choosing Texas. It didn't just hit #1 on 3 different charts. It broke Taylor Swift's 2012 record for the longest-running #1 on the Hot 100 by a female country artist. We are talking about 83 million Spotify streams in under 3 months.
Which is incredibly impressive.
It is historic. And she did it with a purely acoustic track. No pop crossovers, no rap features, no algorithmic production tricks.
Right.
You do not shatter a Taylor Swift record that has stood for over a decade simply because you served dandelion tea at a pop-up and got Miranda Lambert to co-produce. You achieve that because the art is fundamentally true, the audience is not stupid. They recognize truth and they recognized her healing.
You are missing the fundamental mechanics of streaming consumption in 2026. The acoustic instrumentation is the algorithmic production trick for this specific demographic cycle.
How can an acoustic guitar be an algorithmic trick? It's literally just wood and wire.
Because you have to understand context. Market sentiment in 2026 had violently swung away from overproduced pop country precisely because the market was oversaturated with it.
So people wanted something real?
Every playlist was filled with heavy 808 beats and snap tracks. The algorithms look for engagement, sure, but they also respond to contrast. The 90s acoustic purity you're praising was the exact sonic profile the algorithms were starved for.
So you're saying she only succeeded because she sounded different than everyone else at that exact moment?
I'm saying it stood out on playlists because of its contrast, not just its truth. Contrarian programming is a known A&R tactic. When everyone zigs, you zag. The 83 million streams aren't a testament to mass spiritual healing. They are a testament to the fact that the label correctly identified a massive gap in the market for acoustic nostalgia, and they deployed a perfectly calibrated product to fill it.
You are completely removing the soul from the equation. You look at 83 million people connecting with a song about choosing yourself over a toxic situation, and all you see is a gap in the market.
Because that's what drives the industry.
But art drives the industry too. Look, at the 2026 Billboard Women in Music event, Lainey Wilson herself handed Langley the Powerhouse Award. When that happened, it solidified something undeniable.
Undeniable?
Yes! It proved that absolute truth, unvarnished storytelling, and a genuine confrontation with one's own trauma ultimately conquered the industry's capitalist machinery. She went through the Nashville meat grinder, broke down, rebuilt herself on her own terms with Dandelion, and won. She won by refusing to play the game their way.
Did she? Let me ask you this. If an artist meticulously packages their mental breakdowns, their imposter syndrome, and their trauma bonds into a perfectly sequenced, multi-platinum revenue stream that shatters Billboard records, did the artist conquer the industrial machine? Or did she just become its most efficient, self-aware engine?